The morning sun filtered softly through the curtains, casting a gentle golden light over the bedroom where Emma lay awake. The silence was thick, not the peaceful quiet of restful sleep, but a silence weighted with anticipation and unsaid words. Wasn't alone in her thoughts. Claire had knocked softly on the door just after dawn. And now, after hesitating in the threshold, she sat on the edge of Emma and Daniel's bed, holding something in her hands. Emma's breath caught. She had barely slept, turning over the events of the night, trying to make sense of Daniel's unspoken story. Now, in the early light, a sense of inevitability pressed on her. Claire's voice was soft, barely above a whisper. "I need to tell you something," she said, "but not for Daniel. For you." Emma nodded, heart pounding, the knot in her stomach tightening. Claire pulled out a photograph and handed it to Emma. The photo was old, yellowed at the edges, but the image was clear. It showed Daniel and Claire together, laughing, standing in front of a hospital building. They looked younger, full of hope and promise. Daniel's arm was draped over Claire's shoulder. There was a spark in their eyes, a warmth that Emma recognized immediately as the look of two people deeply connected. Emma stared at the picture, trying to read its silent story. Claire's voice broke the quiet. "We met long before you and Daniel." "Did?" she said. "Back then, he wasn't an architect. He was volunteering at the hospital, helping patients. I was one of those patients." Emma's mind reeled. A patient? How had she never heard of this? Claire's eyes glistened with emotion. "I was very sick, diagnosed with something no one thought I'd survive," she continued. "I had no family. Daniel was the one who stayed with me through the hardest days. He was everything I had." Emma felt a strange ache, a deep tenderness for the woman who had once held this piece of Daniel's heart. Claire smiled sadly. "But I left. I couldn't stay, not with my condition. I didn't want to hold him back." Emma swallowed hard, the pieces starting to fit together in a painful puzzle. "Your condition?" she asked gently. Claire nodded. "I was given 5 years to live. That was 10 years ago. I've been fighting ever since." Emma's heart clenched. The woman in her home, the stranger who had appeared out of nowhere, she was fighting a battle Emma hadn't even imagined. Tears welled in Emma's eyes. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Claire reached out and squeezed Emma's hand. "It's not your fault," Claire said. "And it's not a burden. It's just part of my story." For a moment, the two women sat together, bound by an unspoken understanding. Then Claire's voice softened further. "Daniel and I never got closure," she said. "He thought I was gone forever, and I thought leaving was the only way to protect him." Emma looked toward the door, imagining Daniel's face when he found out Claire was back. When Daniel returned later that morning, Emma could see the exhaustion etched deeply on his face. There was no anger or defensiveness when he saw the photograph in Emma's hand. Instead, his eyes filled with a sadness Emma hadn't seen before. Later, as Claire unpacked a small bag in the guest room, Emma watched Daniel move around the house with a weariness that was both physical and emotional. She realized that this wasn't about betrayal or secrets anymore. It was about unfinished stories, about love interrupted by life's cruel twists. Weight of this knowledge settled heavily on Emma's heart. She wondered how she could hold space for Claire and Daniel's past while still protecting her own future. Over the next few days, Emma found herself thinking about Claire in new ways. She noticed the little things, the way Claire's laughter was quiet but genuine, how she looked at Daniel with a mixture of fondness and regret, and how she appreciated Emma's kindness. Without ever asking for more, Emma was surprised to find that her feelings toward Claire were not those of jealousy, but of compassion. Claire was not an enemy. She was a living reminder of love's complexity, of how the heart can hold more than one story at a time. One afternoon, Emma and Claire sat together on the porch swing, the sun warm on their faces. Claire confided, "Sometimes I wonder if I stayed, would things have been different? Would Daniel and I have had a future?" Emma looked at her, searching for the right words. "I don't know," she said honestly. "But I do know that love isn't always about possession or endings. Sometimes it's about holding someone in your heart, even when they're not by your side." Claire smiled, a tear escaping down her cheek. Daniel joined them then, and the three shared a quiet moment, an unspoken acknowledgement that their lives were now intertwined in ways none of them could have imagined. Emma's feelings for Daniel deepened as she saw this side of him, the caring friend, the loyal soul, the man who had loved twice, and perhaps still loved too much. Their marriage, once comfortable and predictable, was becoming something richer, more layered. It wasn't simple. It wasn't easy. But it was real. That week, Emma began to understand that love is not just a feeling. It's a choice. A choice to forgive, to accept, and to keep moving forward, even when the past knocks at the door. And when Claire finally spoke about the toll her illness was taking, Emma's heart broke for her. Claire was running out of time. But instead of retreating into sorrow, Emma felt a fierce protectiveness rise within her. She wanted to be strong for Claire, for Daniel, and for herself. As Claire's presence continued to fill the house, Emma and Daniel found themselves drawn closer, not apart. They talked late into the night, sharing hopes, fears, and dreams they hadn't dared voice before. Emma realized that the woman her husband had brought home wasn't a threat to their love. She was a catalyst, challenging them to be honest and brave. And in that challenge, Emma discovered something unexpected. She still loved Daniel. Not just as her husband, but as the man who had lived a story much bigger than either of them had known. A story of compassion, sacrifice, and enduring love, and she was ready to face whatever came next. The days that followed, Claire's arrival brought a strange new rhythm to the Carter household. Where once the house had been quiet and orderly, now it was filled with the soft sounds of life, quiet conversations, shared laughter, and sometimes even tears. Emma watched as Claire became more than just a guest. She was a presence, one that changed everything without demanding anything in return. The guest room, once neat and reserved for visitors, became a small sanctuary for Claire. But it wasn't just the physical space that changed, it was the emotional landscape that shifted beneath their feet. Daniel, who had seemed tired and distant the day Claire arrived, began to find a certain calm in caring for her. His hands, usually so steady and confident, now held an unmistakable tenderness as he helped Claire navigate her illness. Emma noticed these moments with a bittersweet pang. She saw the softness in Daniel's gaze when he looked at Claire, and she understood it wasn't just friendship, it was something deeper. That Emma's heart was not filled with jealousy. Instead, it overflowed with a complex mixture of empathy, respect, and a growing love for her husband. One evening, the three of them sat outside by the fire pit in the backyard. The stars glittered above, scattered like diamonds against the velvet sky. Claire's voice was quiet but full of wisdom. "I think the best kind of love," she said, "is the kind that knows when to hold on ... and when to let go." Emma reached out and took Claire's hand, feeling the frailty beneath her touch. Claire smiled softly, a bittersweet warmth in her eyes. Daniel sat close, his arm resting gently on Emma's shoulder. In that moment, the past and present seemed to merge into a fragile harmony, a delicate balance of loss and hope. The days passed with a gentle urgency. Claire's condition worsened, but her spirit remained fierce and unyielding. Emma found herself rising early to prepare meals, helping Claire with her medicines, and listening to stories from a life full of dreams and regrets. Claire had asked for one thing in her final week: that Emma and Daniel stay united. "Don't let me come between you," she had said with quiet strength. "Love is bigger than this moment," Emma had promised. When Claire passed away one quiet Sunday morning, the house fell into a stillness heavier than before. Daniel held Claire's hand until the very end, and Emma was there, holding Daniel's other hand. Their grief intertwined like the roots of a tree, deep and unbreakable. In the weeks that followed, Emma and Daniel navigated their sorrow together. They cried openly, talked honestly, and allowed themselves the space to heal. But beyond the heartbreak, something unexpected blossomed. Clarity. The presence of Claire, her story, and her courage had opened a new door between them. A door to deeper understanding and vulnerability. Emma realized that the woman her husband had brought home was never a threat to their love. She was a bridge to a fuller truth. Emma and Daniel began to rebuild their marriage on this new foundation. There were long talks late into the night, where fears and hopes were shared without judgment. Daniel apologized for not telling Emma sooner about Claire, and Emma forgave him not because she had to, but because she wanted to. They learned to cherish each moment, to communicate openly, and to hold each other with renewed tenderness. Emma found herself falling in love with Daniel all over again. Not the Daniel she thought she knew 7 years ago, but a man shaped by love, loss, and compassion. One evening, months after Claire's passing, Emma and Daniel sat by the fireplace, their fingers intertwined. Daniel looked at Emma with eyes full of gratitude and love. "I'm sorry I brought her here the way I did," he whispered. "But thank you for letting her in." The day had started like any other in the quiet town of Brattleboro, Vermont. The air was crisp, the kind of early spring chill that still made Emma pull her sweater tighter around her shoulders as she moved around the house. Her small kitchen, filled with warm morning light, smelled faintly of freshly brewed coffee and toast. Emma Carter was used to routine. She found comfort in the steady rhythm of her life with Daniel, her husband of 7 years. Daniel, a dedicated architect who often worked late on projects in Boston, usually came home late, tired but content to be with her. That Thursday afternoon was different. Emma was arranging flowers in a vase on the dining table, humming softly to herself. She had planned a quiet dinner, just the two of them. Daniel's recent workload had kept him away, and she missed the simple pleasure of sharing their days. Suddenly, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway interrupted her peace. It was earlier than usual. She glanced toward the window, expecting Daniel's familiar smile when he came inside. But instead she saw something, or rather someone else. There was a woman. She was stepping out of the passenger side of the car, wearing a long beige coat that brushed her knees, her dark hair neatly pulled back into a bun. The woman moved with a quiet grace that made her stand out sharply against the familiar landscape of their home. Emma's heart skipped a beat, but not in the way she expected. She blinked, trying to understand what she was seeing. Who was this woman? Why was she here? And why did Daniel look nervous? Daniel's usual calm demeanor was gone. His brows furrowed slightly, and his mouth was set in a line that Emma hadn't seen before. He looked almost unsure of himself, as if walking on unfamiliar ground. Emma's mind raced through possibilities. Was she someone from Daniel's work? A colleague or client he had brought home to discuss plans? But that seemed unlikely. Daniel usually kept work strictly at the office. Could this woman be a friend? A distant relative? Emma had never heard Daniel mention her before. The sound of the doorbell echoed through the house, startling Emma out of her thoughts. Her hands trembled slightly as she walked to the door. When she opened it, she was met with a quiet smile from the woman. Claire, the name Daniel said softly. Claire extended a hand, and Emma shook it, trying to mask the surprise and confusion bubbling inside her. Daniel stepped inside, but didn't look at Emma directly. Instead, he glanced toward Claire, his expression soft but unreadable. "I'm sorry for dropping in like this," Daniel said quickly. "Claire, she needs a place to stay tonight." Emma searched Daniel's face, trying to find a clue, an explanation. But all she saw was a hint of guilt mixed with concern. Her instincts screamed at her, warning her to shut the door and refuse. But something deeper and unspoken kindness pushed her to say, "Of course. Come in." The woman stepped inside, and Emma felt an unexpected chill run down her spine. It wasn't fear or anger. It was something more complicated, a mixture of curiosity, anxiety, and an ache she couldn't name. Inside the house, everything seemed suddenly different. The walls that had held so many memories of her life with Daniel now felt strange, unfamiliar, as if the presence of this stranger was shifting the very air they breathed. Emma busied herself in the kitchen, trying to keep her thoughts from spiraling. She began preparing dinner, the rhythmic chopping of vegetables and the simmering of sauce grounding her for a moment. Claire watched quietly from the living room, her eyes distant but alert. Daniel avoided the topic, offering little explanation. Beyond that, Claire was an old friend. Emma found herself stealing glances at the woman. Claire's posture was elegant but tired. There was something about her, something vulnerable, beneath the calm surface that made Emma's heart ache. As the evening wore on, Emma realized how much tension filled the room. Daniel's fingers drummed nervously on the table, his usual warmth replaced by a distant look. Claire spoke softly but rarely, choosing her words carefully. Emma tried to keep the atmosphere normal, but the silence between them was thick. She wondered what Daniel hadn't said. Why had Claire come back now? What was the story between them? Most of all, Emma felt a subtle shift inside herself, a strange mix of jealousy and compassion. She loved Daniel deeply, but seeing him with this woman, this stranger, stirred feelings she wasn't prepared for. Could she trust Daniel to be honest with her? Would this woman change everything between them? The night grew darker, and Emma found herself lying awake beside Daniel. The familiar weight of his body next to hers brought little comfort. Her mind raced with questions and doubts. Had she really known her husband? Or was this just the beginning of a new, unexpected chapter? The rain tapped gently against the window pane, mirroring the quiet storm inside Emma's heart. She realized that when Daniel brought Claire home, nothing would ever be the same again. The house was quiet, almost too quiet as dinner approached. Emma sat at the edge of the dining table, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The soft hum of the kitchen timer and the faint clatter of pots and pans were the only sounds to break the silence. Claire sat across from her, her posture poised and delicate, like a fragile sculpture carved from years of both strength and sorrow. She didn't speak much, but Emma watched her carefully, trying to read the lines of her face, the subtle emotions hidden behind those calm, dark eyes. Daniel, who should have been the center of the evening, seemed almost like a ghost hovering between the two women. His usual easy charm and warmth were replaced by a tightness in his jaw, and a nervous energy Emma had never seen before. The meal itself was simple. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans, dishes Emma had made countless times, but tonight, the food felt like a backdrop to an unfolding drama she couldn't yet understand. As Emma placed a bite of food in her mouth, She realized how little she actually wanted to eat. Instead, her mind wandered, pulling her back to the moment Daniel had arrived. Why had he brought Claire here? Why hadn't he told her about this woman before? And what did she really want? Claire's eyes flickered to Daniel briefly, and Emma noticed something unspoken pass between them. A memory, perhaps, or a secret too heavy to share openly. She forced herself to speak, breaking the fragile silence. "So, Claire," Emma began softly, "how do you know Daniel?" Claire's gaze lifted, and for a moment, Emma thought she might refuse to answer. But then she smiled, a small, sad smile, and said, "We go way back. A long time ago." Emma nodded, heart tightening. The phrase, "a long time ago," was loaded with meaning. Daniel cleared his throat and jumped in before the conversation could deepen. "Yes, Claire and I were friends during my medical volunteer work. We lost touch for years, but she reached out recently." Emma watched Daniel closely. There was a tension beneath his words, a hesitation that made Emma's suspicion grow. After dinner, Daniel excused himself to take a phone call, leaving Emma and Claire alone in the softly lit living room. Emma felt an awkwardness settle between them, like two strangers forced together by fate. Claire shifted in her seat, her eyes reflecting a vulnerability that Emma hadn't seen before. Finally, Claire spoke. "Daniel told me you'd be kind," she said quietly. "Thank you for letting me stay here." Emma swallowed hard, trying to find the right words. "Of course. I know this must be difficult for all of us." Claire nodded, but there was a heaviness in her expression that Emma couldn't ignore. "Ah, you in trouble?" Emma asked gently, sensing there was more to Claire's story than she was letting on. Claire hesitated. "You could say that, but it's complicated." Emma leaned forward slightly. "You don't have to explain if it's too much, but if you want to talk, I'm here." For a moment, Claire seemed to consider Emma's offer, then shook her head softly. "No, it's not about me needing help. It's about unfinished things. Things Daniel and I never got to say." Emma's chest tightened. What could be so important? That Daniel brought a woman home without warning, leaving her to piece together the truth. Daniel returned just then, breaking the moment. His phone call had ended, but the worry in his eyes hadn't. "We have a guest room ready," he said quickly, leading Claire upstairs. Emma followed quietly behind them, her heart pounding. When Claire closed the door behind her, Emma felt a swirl of emotions: confusion, fear, jealousy, but also a strange sense of compassion. That night, Emma lay awake in bed, the room dark except for the soft glow of streetlights filtering through the curtains. Daniel's breathing was steady beside her, but Emma felt miles away from the man she thought she knew. Her mind raced with questions and doubts. Had Daniel been hiding this part of his life from her? Was Claire a threat to their marriage, or was she something else entirely? As the rain began to tap softly against the window, Emma realized the truth was waiting for her, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to face it. The stranger at her table was not just an unexpected guest. She was a reminder of the past of love, loss, and the complexity of human hearts. Emma closed her eyes and wished for clarity, for answers, for the strength to face whatever was coming next.